What we're going to cover today are basically two things. One, we're going to review shortly what XDR is all about and what's the differences between a universal XDR, not necessarily of SecBI, but in general, universal XDR, versus a siloed approach or a single vendor XDR, such as Palo Alto, Trend Micro, etc., which is a great solution by itself, as well as a review shortly SecBI's solution, so that you guys can review, understand, and start thinking whether XDR is something that interests you and your organizations. First of all, it's a pleasure. My name is Doron Davidson. I'm the founder and VP Business Development at SecBI. We started SecBI about 6 years ago as an aftermath to the RSA breach. So back then, I used to manage the professional services of RSA across Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And when RSA got breached, we helped with the whole breach response. And shortly after, we thought, well, it took us over 30 days just to gather data, put it all together, understand the context, understand how the attack started. Let's automate this process of gathering data from different sources to enable analysts across the globe understand faster what the attack is all about and how to respond to it. So basically, it was an automated detection, investigation, and a hunting tool. Over time, we did evolve to what is today an XDR. Gartner defines XDR as extended detection and response, SaaS-based security threat detection and incident response tool that natively integrates multiple security products into a cohesive security operation system that unifies all licensed components. Basically, if you have already an endpoint detection and response, firewall, web gateway, Active Directory, CASB, etc., you basically want to be able to look at all of the different alerts and events in one single place for easier and faster detection, full scope detection, and then enable response based on that. By the way, if you have any questions, it's a small group, so you're more than welcome to just stop me and ask. Gartner did say about a year ago that XDR is going to be one of the top security priorities projects for 2020, as well as one of the top 3 for 2021. And we actually see that in the market, where more and more organizations understand that their best of breed solutions can do much more once you actually connect and correlate the data they produce. And that's where SecBI comes to play. And therefore, we actually surveyed about 200 CISOs worldwide in the past 3 months. And we do see that about 75%, 79% strongly agree that XDR should be a top security initiative. Not only that, they have specific plans over the next 24 months to implement an XDR solution. And if you look at whether the approach should be a universal XDR or a single vendor XDR, it basically makes excellent sense to develop a universal XDR simply because there are 96% of the organizations worldwide that are using either best of breed or solutions from several vendors. Our universal XDR is supposed to give them a better approach. That said, if you do have all of your solutions of a single vendor, it actually makes perfect sense to continue with that vendor. Their familiarity with the raw data, with the telemetry of their endpoint, etc., would actually make their detection just as good as ours, maybe even better, because of their intimate familiarity with their data. While our approach is a bit different, that's the universal XDR. This is where we're ingesting data from the different security controls across the organization. It starts with the data ingestion, and the purpose of the data ingestion is to really bring all of the data into one single uniformed data source, out of which we can then read. So whether you have deployed Fortinet or Mimecast or Checkpoint network security, we will be able to bring it in and turn it into a unified data store. On top of which we can then run our full scope detection. The purpose of the full scope detection is indeed to detect and provide an analyst visibility of the full story, from infiltration, lateral movement, down to exfiltration of data. And we're doing it based on both correlating based on the MITRE ATT&CK, and we're supporting over 250 of the MITRE ATT&CK techniques to correlate data from endpoint with gateway firewalls, etc. Mail gateway as well. And then we are turning to machine learning in order to kind of automate the ability to build behaviors and find behaviors within the organization. These behaviors enable us to detect the full scope of the attack across multiple users, multiple devices, rather than just a single event or a single incident within one specific product. On top of all of that, we are then adding threat intelligence to add additional context for the analyst, to add additional understanding of the attack itself. From there, you can basically move to incident response. If either the score of the behavior is high enough as an actual malicious activity, or it had triggered one of our playbooks, it will actually go through an automated incident response process to orchestrate the response. If it had not, so the severity isn't high enough, or nothing had triggered any of the existing playbooks, it can actually go through a threat hunting process or a manual kind of breach investigation. This is basically the main technology part of the system, and how it ingests data, goes through detection down to response. On top of that, we obviously have management reporting, log repository of your raw data, or connectivity to an existing data repository. In my lab, what I am about to show you, we've actually connected 5 different data sources. We've uploaded the data onto Cousteau. So I am actually connecting now to Cousteau in real time and running the system in real time. I'm actually demonstrating here a lab that connects data from 5 sources: Checkpoint, as you might have seen a second ago, EDR with CrowdStrike EDR, with Cybereason EDR, as well as Zscaler as web gateway, and Proofpoint for mail gateway. All of those sources together were received, and in the past 24 hours, we've basically processed 5.7 million events and turned it into 4,798 different behaviors. Most of those behaviors obviously are benign, are good behaviors. It's someone logging into CNN.com or to read about Biden, etc. But some of those are indeed malicious, and you can even see that 2 were found to be malicious, and they've triggered an automated playbook that took them through remediation process. And we will actually look at what was detected there and how the remediation process gone through. In addition to that, on the right-hand side, this is the actionable part of the system. This is where you can see the top incidents, and if you're an analyst, this is where you would start your day, either from specific tasks that you've received from your manager, or by logging into here and start working the incidents one by one. So let's look at the 2 that were detected and remediated. What you can see here, this is our heat map. So I can remove the current selection, and it will show you all the different behaviors that were detected within this organization, within my lab. I'll do that in a second. But what you see in this specific selection of what was remediated, you can see that we have here 2 incidents, different severities, 3 identities in each, communicating with 5 hosts over a period of 9 days. There is a small difference between these. And when I log in, let me hide the data for a second. What you can actually see is our full scope detection, starting from how malware was delivered via email. And we got this information from Proofpoint. Now, it's not that Proofpoint had detected that this is malware. Proofpoint only provided us the data that we've then used in order to correlate and understand, oh, there are 3 users that have received these 3 attachments in a short period of time, of 2 hours in this case. And shortly after that, only these 3 users have also downloaded an executable file and launched it on the system. This is actually stage 2 of the malware. There is high correlation, high confidence of 91% here that these two events are actually related, and therefore when you investigate them, you should investigate them together. Also, if you continue with the story, shortly after that, we've detected beaconing. Again, 3 identities, same identities, communicating with 3 different hosts. And finally, they're also exfiltrating data, sending data out, again, to these 3 hosts. All in all, we're looking at 3 users communicating with 5 destinations, sending out 296 megabytes of data. Now, if this is enough for you to make a decision of, yes, I want to respond to it, you can do it manually. In this specific case, we see that it had already been remediated, so we can see what was triggered. But if not, and you do want to investigate it manually, you can basically have access here to all the raw data, whether as a unified form or the HTTP, SMTP, etc., with threat intelligence or without any filters. But also, you can dig even deeper. If I'm looking now at the data coming from the endpoint, I can actually double click and bring additional information from the device itself to help me gain higher confidence before I actually respond to this specific incident. Now, what SecBI has done in order to respond, so the automated playbook was open a ticket on ServiceNow, clean the workstations, these 3 workstations using CrowdStrike, and add to the block policy of Zscaler. Or in other words, let's look at the actual playbook. It receives the information of the ticket itself via SecBI. It then runs ServiceNow to open a ticket. Using SecBI's API, it then launches CrowdStrike Falcon in order to do the cleanup of the 3 machines, or using Zscaler's API in order to remediate and add to the blacklist the list of hosts that it receives here in the parameters. This is as simple, basically, as it gets. Now, just like this playbook, you obviously get a system with several dozens of playbooks. Some of them are more basic, like our check URL reputation, which if we will look at it, it gets a parameter of what's the URL, and then it starts running it on Alien Vault, on CrowdStrike, on VirusTotal, on URL, Scan.io, etc., based on all the sources that are activated within your environment, obviously. And then this playbook can be nested within another playbook. Let's look at the malware investigation, for example, where it uses this URL scanning in order to gather information and make a decision as to whether this is indeed a phishing. I went into the malware, into malware investigation. Actually, on malware investigation, I'm not sure that we're using the URL scanning. We do on the phishing investigation. Each of these can be either configured or you can add your own playbook. Adding a playbook is extremely simple. It's as simple as choosing the specific either pre-defined playbook or an API to a product that is deployed within your organization. For example, CrowdStrike, Falcon, and we want to choose the run command, and then you can run the command itself. Where do we get all of these integrations? So first of all, we have several dozens of integrations already, actually about 100 or so, already as part of the system. These are all the vendors themselves, and then you can define their products, and eventually you can define their actions. If something is missing, you can actually add your own vendor. For example, if you have a bespoke system within your organization, you can actually add it as long as it has REST API documented that you can then edit as part of the actions itself. You can basically define anything that you want. For example, the Barracuda Mail Gateway as part of the investigation. It can do, these are the response parameters and the parameters that you're sending to it, in this case, none. And this is how simple it is to add additional configurations of your own actions. I did mention before that we also have the ability to correlate, and we have MITRE ATT&CK techniques already implemented. So all of these basically. And now it depends on what kind of sources you have within your organization. So if we get access to your EDR telemetry data, obviously most of these will be activated. If on top of that you can provide us access to your web gateway logs, firewall logs, etc., more and more of these will become yellow and active. And it all builds into the behaviors eventually that I've shown before, something that was detected, or this is the full heat map of the behaviors that were detected in the system in the past 24 hours. And you can see the 4,798 behaviors. So if so far we've seen how we've detected something and went through an automated detection and response, what you can do here is a proactive hunting. So you can basically define any criteria that you can look up within these behaviors. For example, let's find malicious communication. And these are all the behaviors, 136 of suspected malicious communication. But let's say that you're paying for threat intelligence and you trust your threat intelligence. Then what you can also add is malicious communication with at least one indication of threat intelligence, and you see here 13. And if I want to refine it even more, let's do tick, IOC, distinct, and let's say that I want to take only behaviors with 2 or more indicators of compromise, and here you are only 4. So I've just raised the confidence that this detection is indeed something that might require either an automated investigation or manual one. And if I also get to the conclusion that this this detection is something that I'd like to have repeatable within my organization, I would actually save it as such. Control A, demo 2021-20, save, and now it will be part of my queries, and I can run it. I can define this query to be a part of the daily job of one of my analysts, or I can just automate it. So from now on, I want this query to launch and trigger a certain playbook that can do something. For example, run the playbook that we've seen before. SecBI automation full playbook, save, that's it. Save playbook. 2021, tick 20. Save. So we've seen the exploration, connectivity, and it might be also connected to something that you've asked before. So in this case, we've connected to Azure Custo, which basically means that all of our data resides on that data store. So if I choose one of my data sources and I take the first 100 lines, and this is the KKL, the Custo query language, KQL, then I can basically just get all the raw data, based on which I can now do deeper investigation, hunting, or again, I can have it as a trigger to one of my playbooks. The only thing that I think we still have time to see are a couple of reports. For example, I did mention the threat intelligence that you're buying. So if you are buying threat intelligence, you probably want to know what's the effect and effectiveness of that threat intelligence. So you can run one of these pre-canned reports, or you can build any of of the other reports that you have, and then basically see the added value of SecBI on top of your existing threat intelligence. So we used 1,531 different values out of IOCs within those threat intelligence, out of 23, by the way, and we were able to add 1,530 more thanks to our clustering, basically, thanks to the behaviors that we've clustered together and found things that are related. But that wouldn't necessarily convince you to buy something or not from threat intelligence. But if I'll show you the quality, the provider's quality, this is where you can actually see what threat intelligence was used and how much false positives and true positives they were able to provide you as part of these detections. Obviously, this is a lab, so I wouldn't necessarily look at these numbers. But in theory, this is where you can see the effectiveness of the different threat intelligence that you're connecting within your system. What we've seen today, we've seen how we detect and automate the response, as well as how we can define new integrations, new playbooks, as well as manually hunt and investigate incidents within the Universal XDR system. Universal meaning that we can connect different sources of different vendors across your security stack. If you do have any additional questions, feel free to contact me at doron@secbi.com, and I'll be more than happy to provide you any additional details. We can also set up a one-on-one similar such session where we can discuss the specific needs of your organization or the specific integrations that you're actually looking for. So thank you very much for joining us today, and I hope that this was beneficial for you, and I hope to keep in touch soon. Thank you and have a wonderful day.